I never saw it coming one moment. I was sitting at the dining table scrolling through my phone after a long day at work, enjoying the background noise of my kids laughing in the living room. The next, Olivia, my wife of 12 years, stormed into the room with her phone clutched in her trembling hand, her face contorted with fury. "Who the hell is she?" she demanded, her voice shaking. I blinked at her, my brain scrambling to make sense of what was happening. "Who?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Don't play dumb with me, Adam," she shouted, shoving her phone in my face. I flinched back slightly before taking a closer look at the screen. My stomach dropped. There, in clear black and white text, was a message from an unknown Facebook account. The sender claimed to be a concerned woman who had come across my Tinder profile, complete with my name, my photos, and an entire history of messages exchanged with multiple women, explicit messages. I let out a small laugh, more from disbelief than amusement. "This is ridiculous," I scoffed, shaking my head. "Olivia, you know I don't have Tinder." But she wasn't laughing. Instead, she turned on her heel, grabbed her own phone, and within seconds, I saw her typing furiously. My heart pounded as I watched her download the Tinder app right in front of me. "Go ahead and explain this," she spat, holding her screen up for me to see there. It was an active Tinder profile under my name, complete with my photos, my details, and a last active status that read "online," less than a kilometer away. My stomach twisted. My voice trailed off as I snatched her phone and scrolled through the profile, my pictures, my name, my general location. But it wasn't me. I had never created a Tinder account in my life. "Olivia, listen to me," I said, looking up at her. "I swear to you, I don't know who made this. Someone must be using my pictures." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Really? Someone just conveniently decided to catfish women using your face. Do you think I'm stupid, Adam?" I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of frustration pressing down on my chest. "No, of course not." "But you have to believe me, Olivia. This isn't my account. I have no reason to be on Tinder. I love you. I love our family. Why would I risk all of that for something this stupid?" But she wasn't listening. Her face was set in stone, her eyes brimming with betrayal and something else, disgust. "I don't know, Adam. Why don't you tell me?" she snapped, turning the phone back toward herself. "Because, according to this, you've been very busy." She scrolled through messages. I had never sent messages filled with flirtation, crude jokes, and, worst of all, pictures. Pictures of me. It felt like my world was tilting off its axis. "Olivia, this isn't me." I repeated, my voice thick with desperation. "Someone is pretending to be me. This is a setup. Please, you have to believe me." She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "I want to believe you, Adam. But tell me, how did these pictures end up on this account?" "Pictures I took of you on our anniversary, the same ones you have saved on your laptop." My breath caught in my throat, my laptop. The realization hit me like a freight train, knocking the air from my lungs. The only time I ever uploaded personal pictures to any device was through my old laptop, the one that had been sitting in our house for months. Before I got a new one, the one I had loaned to our neighbor Rick. When he told me his had crashed and he needed something for work, my mouth went dry. But before I could say a word, Olivia let out a bitter, hollow laugh. "You're silent now, huh? Nothing to say?" she said, shaking her head. "I gave you a chance to tell me the truth, Adam. I wanted to hear you say it. But now I see I was just wasting my time." My pulse roared in my ears as I watched her expression darken. She didn't believe me. After everything we had been through, after years of love, after 3 kids and a home we built together, She thought I was cheating on her, Olivia, please. I whispered, stepping toward her, but she recoiled like I was a stranger. Don't? She hissed, her eyes wet with unshed tears. I don't even want to look at you right now. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the hallway, leaving me standing there in the middle of our kitchen, drowning in the crushing weight of false accusations. I felt frozen in place, my mind racing. I needed to fix this. I needed to prove to her, that this wasn't me, that someone else was responsible for this. But how? How do you prove your innocence when all the evidence is stacked against you? I barely slept that night. Olivia locked herself in the guest room, refusing to speak to me. I sat on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in my head, trying to piece together what had happened. I knew the truth, but it didn't matter, because in her eyes, I was already guilty. And that was when it hit me. The beginning of the end wasn't when she showed me the messages. It was the moment she chose to believe a stranger over me, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive her for that. I barely had time to process what had happened before Olivia made her next move. She didn't just accuse me. She made sure the entire world knew about it. I sat at the edge of the couch, my fingers clenched into fists, my head pounding. I had spent the entire night in the living room, replaying the events over and over, trying to make sense of it all. How had this happened? How had my life, my marriage, turned into this nightmare in a matter of hours? I had tried speaking to Olivia again that morning, but she ignored me. She walked past me like I didn't exist, like I was already some stranger who had wronged her beyond repair. She had barely looked at me when she left the house, her car pulling out of the driveway at full speed. I didn't know where she was going, but a part of me already suspected she was going to tell her family, and I was right. By evening, my phone started blowing up. First, it was a text from her sister. I can't believe you would do this to Olivia, to your kids. You make me sick. Then came another, this time from her mother. I don't even have the words for what you've done. I just hope it was worth it. And then the worst one of all, her brother, Marcus. No text, no call, just an ominous notification. I'm coming over. I barely had time to stand up before the sound of a car screeching into my driveway made my blood run cold. A door slammed shut. Heavy footsteps stormed toward the front porch. I knew what was coming the second I opened the door. I barely had time to get a word out. Before his fist connected with my jaw, the force sent me stumbling back, my vision flashing white for a second before the pain followed. A deep, burning ache spreading through my cheek and down my neck. What the hell, Marcus? I shouted, clutching my face. You piece of... He spat, shoving me hard against the wall. You think you can humiliate my sister and get away with it? You think you can sleep around and still walk into this house like nothing happened? I didn't cheat. I roared, shoving him back with all the force I had. I don't know who made that Tinder account, but it wasn't me. Marcus scoffed his fists, clenching at his sides. His eyes burned with pure rage, like he had already decided that no matter what I said, I was guilty. You expect me to believe that, after everything Olivia showed me? He shook his head, his voice laced with disgust. You don't deserve her. You don't deserve this family. Before I could respond, my father-in-law stepped into the house. I hadn't even realized he was outside. He walked in slowly, his face unreadable, but there was no warmth in his expression, just disappointment. Pack your things, he said quietly. I frowned. Excuse me, you heard me? His voice was cold, emotionless. The kids don't need to see this. Olivia doesn't need to see this leave. I blinked at him, stunned. This was my home, the place I had built with Olivia, the place where we had raised our kids, shared years of memories. And yet, here I was being kicked out like some criminal. For my own safety. I let out a bitter laugh, looking between the two men who were supposed to be my family. This is my house. My name is on the mortgage. I have just as much right to be here as Olivia, not tonight, you don't? My father-in-law set his gaze hard. If you don't leave now, the next time you hear a knock at the door, it'll be the police. I stared at him in disbelief. You called the police on me. Marcus smirked. Let's just say, if you don't walk out of here on your own, they'll make sure you do. A lump formed in my throat as I realized the full weight of what was happening I had already lost. It didn't matter that I was innocent. It didn't matter that there was no proof, no actual evidence that I had cheated. The accusation alone was enough to destroy me. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Fine, if they wanted me asked out, I would go. But I wasn't leaving without a fight. Without a word, I walked past them, heading upstairs to pack a small bag. As I entered the bedroom, the room Olivia and I had shared for 12 years, I felt something break inside me. How had we ended up here? Just days ago. We were laughing, making dinner together, playing with the kids. And now she had turned against me so easily. By the time I came back downstairs, a police car was already parked outside. The officer at the door gave me a neutral glance. Sir, we were called about a potential domestic dispute. We're just here to ensure everything stays peaceful. I clenched my jaw, gripping my duffel bag tighter. There's no dispute. I muttered. I'm leaving Smart Choice. Marcus sneered. I ignored him and stepped outside. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face. The neighborhood was quiet, except for the occasional flicker of curtains from the surrounding houses. They were watching. I was being humiliated in front of my own neighbors. I walked to my car, my legs feeling like lead. As I opened the door, I took one last glance at my house, the home I had worked so hard for. The home I was now being forced out of. Olivia stood at the window. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked broken for a second, I thought she might come outside, that she might stop me, that she might say anything to make this right. But she didn't. She just stood there watching as I got into my car and drove away. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't just leaving my house. I was leaving my entire life behind. The hotel room was suffocating. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, my duffel bag lying open beside me, half packed with whatever clothes I could shove into it. Before I left the house, my head throbbed from the punch Marcus had thrown at me, and my jaw still ached every time I moved it. But that pain was nothing compared to what was twisting inside me. I had lost my home. I had lost my wife, and worst of all, I could feel myself losing my children. I checked my phone again. No messages, not from Olivia, not from my kids. It had been 3 days since I was forced out of my own house. And in those 3 days, the story had spread like wildfire. Olivia had wasted no time in making sure everyone knew what kind of monster she thought I was. At first, it started with close family, her parents, her siblings. Then it spread to mutual friends, and then somehow it made its way into my workplace that morning. When I walked into the office, the whispers followed me like a shadow. I didn't need to hear their words to know what they were saying. I heard he cheated on Olivia. She caught him on Tinder. Disgusting, can you believe it? 12 years of marriage, and he throws it all away. I sat at my desk, my hands clenched into fists. as I tried to ignore the murmurs around me. But the worst came when my boss, the man I had worked under for nearly a decade, pulled me aside. "I don't know what's going on in your personal life," he said, rubbing the bridge above his nose. "But we can't have this kind of scandal affecting the company clients. Talk, Adam. Your reputation is tied to this firm, and right now it's not looking good." I stared at him, the weight of his words pressing against my chest. "You're punishing me for something I didn't even do," I said, my voice tight. He sighed, shaking his head. "I'm not firing you. But if you can't fix this mess, you're going to lose more than just your marriage. You're going to lose your career too." That was when I realized how deep the dam went. This wasn't just about Olivia believing I had cheated. This was about the way one accusation, a false accusation, could destroy everything I had built, and the worst part, she wasn't done. That evening, when I tried calling to speak to the kids, Olivia didn't answer. I tried again and again and again. Finally, after what felt like the 100th attempt, she picked up. "What do you want, Adam?" She said, her voice flat. "My kids," I said, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. "I want to talk to my kids." She let out a humorless laugh. "Now you care." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. "Olivia, don't do this. I am still their father. You know I would never do anything to hurt them." She was silent for a moment, and for the briefest second. I thought she might actually listen. But then she spoke. "You're not seeing them this weekend." My stomach dropped. "What, I don't think it's a good idea." She continued, her voice sharp. "I don't want them around you right now. They confused Adam. They don't understand why their father—" She paused, her voice dripping with venom, "betrayed their mother." I sucked in a breath, "Olivia, you can't do this legally. You can't keep them from me." "I can." "Actually," she cut in, "and unless you want to drag this through the courts, I suggest you back off." The line went dead. I sat there, the dial tone ringing in my ears, my pulse hammering in my skull. She was taking my children away from me. She was taking everything. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, bouncing between work, my hotel, and desperate attempts to reach my kids. Every call was ignored. Every message went unanswered. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did. One morning, as I was sipping on cheap coffee in the hotel lobby, my phone buzzed with a notification, a message from an old friend. I clicked on it, my stomach twisting into knots as I read the words. "Dude, have you seen Olivia's post?" My blood turned to ice. I quickly opened Facebook, scrolling until I saw it there, plastered on her page for the entire world to see, was a long post detailing her heartbreak, her betrayal, her strength in the face of my so-called infidelity. She had written about how she had discovered my secret life, how she had been devastated for our children, how she had been left to pick up the pieces after I had thrown our marriage away. And then, the worst part, the comments. "Stay strong, Olivia. You deserve better than that pig. I always knew there was something off about him. How could he do this to you, to his own family? What a disgrace." I scrolled through them, my hands shaking. My own friends had commented, some of them offering sympathy, some of them outright condemning me. Not one person had asked for my side. Not one person had doubted her story. My breathing became shallow as the reality of it all hit me like a sledgehammer. I was being Aras, not just as Olivia's husband, but as a father, as a friend, as a respected man. I wasn't just losing my marriage, I was losing everything. That night, as I lay on the stiff hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt something inside me harden, I had begged Olivia to listen. I had tried to reason with her. I had spent weeks hoping that somehow she would realize the truth, that she would see what she had done. But that hope was gone. Now she had made her choice. She had buried me alive, and now I had no choice but to leave it all behind. I picked up my phone, my fingers shaking slightly as I typed out the message to my boss. I'm resigning. I'll be leaving for Sydney by the end of the month. I was done fighting for a life that had already been ripped away from me. The only thing left to do was walk away from the wreckage. Leaving was easier than I expected, maybe because there wasn't anything left to fight for the day I boarded my flight to Sydney. I didn't tell anyone, no farewell messages, no goodbyes, just me, my suitcase, and a one-way ticket out of the life that had been ripped apart. As the plane took off, I stared out at the endless sky. My mind numb, my heart hollow. I should have felt something. Sadness, regret, maybe even anger. But all I felt was exhaustion, a deep bone, crushing. Exhaustion that made me sink into my seat, close my eyes and let go of the past, or at least I tried. The first few months in Sydney passed in a blur. I buried myself in work, throwing everything I had into my new job. The long hours kept me occupied, and when I wasn't working, I was either at the gym or lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts drifting back to the family I had lost, because even though I had left, they were still there. My children were still there. I tried calling. At first it was every day, then every few days, then every few weeks. Olivia never answered. Instead, she forwarded everything through lawyers, legal restrictions, scheduled visitations I couldn't make because I was on another continent, updates about the kids that felt more like business reports than messages from the mother of my children. It was like she was slowly erasing me from their lives, just like she had done before. And maybe, just maybe, she had succeeded because eventually I stopped trying. Not because I didn't love them, but because I was tired. Tired of begging, tired of hoping that Olivia would come to her senses, tired of waking up every day to a life that felt like a punishment for a crime I never committed, so I let the silence take over. 14 months passed without a real conversation between me and Olivia. Not one word. Until the night everything changed. It was a cold November evening when my lawyer called. I had just gotten home from work, tossing my keys onto the counter. When my phone buzzed, I almost ignored it. Another case update, another meaningless document to sign, but something about the way his name flashed on my screen made me pick up, "Hello. You're going to want to sit down for this?" he said, my stomach tight. "Ed, what is it?" There was a pause. Then he sighed. "Olivia knows the truth." I frowned. What truth? The truth about the Tinder account. He said she found out who really made it. For a moment I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly I sank into the nearest chair. Who? Richard, the name, punched the air from my lungs. "Richard," I repeated, my voice, barely a whisper. "Your old neighbor, apparently Olivia's friend, was at a party a few weeks ago, and she overheard Richard bragging about how he had set up fake accounts using your photos. He thought it was funny how easy it was to make someone look guilty. When Olivia confronted him, he laughed that off, said it was just a joke and that he didn't think she'd actually believe it." I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around my phone. My entire body went rigid as the weight of those words sank in a joke that had cost me, my family, my marriage, my entire life. "She's sending you an email." My lawyer continued an apology, a long one. "She wants to talk." I swallowed my throat dry. My mind was a storm of emotions, rage, disbelief, exhaustion. She wanted to talk. Now that the damage was done, now that I had spent over a year living with the weight of a crime I never committed, I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "What do you want me to say to her?" my lawyer asked. I opened my mouth, closed it. Then, after a long pause, I said the only thing I could tell her. "We can talk over Christmas." That night, I lay in bed staring at my phone screen. The email was sitting in my inbox from Olivia. Subject: "I'm sorry I didn't open it. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to." I already knew what it would say: regret, excuses, explanations. But none of them mattered, because an apology didn't change what she had done. It didn't change the nights I spent alone in a hotel wondering how my life had crumbled overnight. It didn't change CH. The fact that she had chosen to believe a stranger over me. It didn't change the fact that she had destroyed me. I put my phone down, rolling onto my back. Christmas was a month away. She wanted to talk, and for the first time in a long time, I had nothing left to say. The December air was crisp when my plane touched down in the city I once called home. It had been over a year since I had last set foot here, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The streets were the same, the buildings stood where they always had, but I felt like a stranger in my own past, walking through the ruins of a life I no longer recognized. I didn't go to our house. I didn't tell Olivia I had arrived. Instead, I checked into a hotel near the city center, unpacked the bare essentials, and sat by the window staring out at the skyline. This wasn't a vacation. This wasn't a reunion. This was a confrontation, and I had no idea how it would end. The next morning, I arrived at my old house to pick up the kids. I expected Olivia to wait inside and let them come out on their own. I expected a quick exchange, a tense nod, maybe a forced smile. But when I pulled into the driveway, she was standing at the door. She looked different, not physically. She was still the same Olivia I had loved for over a decade. But there was something in her posture, in the way she shifted on her feet, in the way her hands trembled at her sides. She was nervous. "Can we talk?" she asked. As soon as I stepped out of the car, I leaned against the door, arms crossed. No emotion, no reaction. "We already are," I said flatly. She exhaled, rubbing her arms as if the cold was getting to her, though I knew it wasn't the weather making her uncomfortable. "Inside?" she asked hesitantly. I hesitated. Every instinct in me screamed. No, going into that house meant walking into the past, stepping back into a place that had already spit me out once before. But I had come here for answers, and maybe for closure. "Fine," I muttered. Rushing past her and stepping inside the house hadn't changed. Same furniture, same warm lighting, same faint scent of vanilla candles. But it wasn't my home anymore. I sat down on the couch, the same couch I had slept on the night she accused me. The same couch I had left behind when I was thrown out of my own house. She sat across from me, her hands clasped together in her lap. Silence stretched between us. I let her sit in it, let her drown in it. Finally, she spoke. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I know that now." I said nothing. She swallowed eyes, glassy. "I should have believed you. I should have listened." Still, I didn't speak because what was I supposed to say? That I forgave her, that I had just been waiting for this moment, so I could fall into her arms and pretend the past 14 months never happened? No. She exhaled shakily. Her voice broke. "I ruined everything, didn't I?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my gaze unwavering. "You didn't just ruin our marriage, Olivia," I said quietly. "You ruined me." A tear slipped down her cheek. I know I let out a bitter chuckle, shaking my head. No, you don't know. You don't know what it was like to be abandoned by everyone you thought cared about you. You don't know what it was like to wake up every morning knowing your own children thought you were a liar. You don't know what it was like to sit in a hotel room staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell your life got destroyed. Overnight, her face crumpled. Adam, you had one job. I cut in my voice hard. One job, Olivia. To believe in me. And you didn't. She covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. But I didn't comfort her. I didn't reach out, because this wasn't about her tears. This was about mine. The ones I had shed in silence. The ones I had buried beneath anger and exhaustion. The ones I had cried alone while she lived her life, convinced that I had betrayed her. Do you know what the worst part is? I asked, my voice quiet. She looked at me. Eyes are waiting. It wasn't just you, I said. It was your family, your brother, your friends. They all judged me without a second thought. They all turned their backs on me. I let out a hollow laugh. And now what, Olivia? Now I'm just supposed to come back to pretend. None of that happened. She wiped at her face, her breath uneven. I don't expect you to forgive me, she whispered. Good, I said bluntly. Because I don't, she flinched. But I do expect you to fix it. I continued. Every lie you spread, every person you told, you're going to undo it. Every single piece of damage you caused. Olivia, you're going to own up to it. She nodded quickly, as if she had already thought of this. I will, she promised. I've already started. I reached out to your old boss. I told him the truth. I talked to some of our mutual friends, and I even made a post, a public post, explaining everything. I studied her, trying to see if this was another performance, another act of desperation. But she looked sincere, desperate, yes. But not for herself, for me, for us. I leaned back, rubbing a hand over my face. Why now, Olivia? I asked tiredly. Why? Only now, when it's too late. She swallowed because I thought I was right. She admitted, I thought I was protecting myself, the kids. I was hurt and I let my emotions blind me. And then, when I realized the truth, I was so ashamed of what I'd done that I didn't know how to face you. I exhaled, slowly shaking my head, and now she wiped at her eyes. Now I just want to make things right, even if it takes the rest of my life. Silence settled between us again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was hollow, because the damage was already done. I stood up. I need to pick up the kids. She nodded, standing as well. Can we talk later? I met her gaze. We'll see. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but she held back. Instead, she stepped aside, letting me walk to the door. As I stepped out into the cold December air, I took a deep breath. I had faced the woman who destroyed me, and though she wanted redemption, though she wanted a second chance, I didn't know if I had anything left to give. I drove in silence. The kids were in the back seat, chattering about their school projects, their friends, and the Christmas gifts they were hoping for. It felt surreal, like stepping into a life that should have been mine, but wasn't. For over a year, I had been nothing more than a voice on the other end of a call that Olivia rarely allowed a distant figure in their lives, and now sitting here with them. It felt both comforting and painfully unfamiliar. Dad. I glanced in the rearview mirror. My eldest Lucas was watching me carefully. He was 12 now, and in that short span of time, he had changed his face, had matured slightly. His voice had deepened, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hesitation. Yeah, bud, I said, forcing a smile. He bit his lip. Are you staying this time? I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my jaw clenching. I hated that he had to ask, hated that Olivia's actions had forced him to question whether his own father was temporary. Before I could answer, my youngest, Ava, piped up. "Mom said you left because you had to work really far away," she said, swinging her legs. "But you can work here, right? So you don't have to go back." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I had never left them by choice, but to them. I had just been gone. I swallowed hard, I don't know. Yet, I admitted, "But I'm here now." That's what matters, right? Lucas didn't look convinced, but Ava, bless her innocence, nodded enthusiastically. "Right," she chirped. "Can we get ice cream before we go to Grandma's?" I chuckled softly. "Sure, kiddo." Ice cream it is for a moment. Everything felt normal. For a moment, I could pretend that I was just a father spending time with his kids for a moment. I could forget when I dropped them off at Olivia's house. Later that evening, I didn't plan to go inside. I had already had my conversation with her. There was nothing left to say. But as soon as the kids ran inside, Olivia stepped onto the porch, her arms crossed. "We need to talk," she said. I exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. "Olivia, not about us," she interrupted. "About my family." That caught my attention. I frowned. "What about them?" She hesitated. "They don't think they did anything wrong." I let out a humorless laugh. "Of course they don't." She flinched, but I didn't care. Her family had ruined me just as much as she had her brother. Marcus, the man who had humiliated me in my own home, had never reached out. Her father, the man who had ordered me out of my own house, had never apologized. "Did you expect them to?" I asked bitterly. "Or did you just think everything would magically be okay once you realized the truth?" She sighed. "I told them what Richard did. I told them you weren't guilty." "And do you know what my father said?" I crossed my arms waiting. He said, "Well, if it wasn't Tinder, it would have been something else." My blood ran cold. "Excuse me." She looked away. Shame, coloring her expression. "He thinks you would have cheated. Eventually. That meant always do." I clenched my jaw. "So hard to attach, Marcus?" I asked. She hesitated before shaking her head. "He still thinks hitting you is justified. He says he was protecting his sister." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my throat. "Protecting you from what, Olivia? From your own paranoia." She winced, but didn't argue because she knew I was right. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "So what are you telling me?" I asked. "That your family still hates me, that they don't care that they ruined my life." She hesitated. I just don't want things to be ugly forever." I stared at her in disbelief. "Olivia," I said slowly, "I lost everything because of you, because of them. And now you're telling me you want me to just pretend it never happened." She shook her head quickly. "No, she swallowed. "I don't know what I want. I just know that I don't want our kids to grow up seeing us like this, seeing my family and their father at war." I dragged a hand down my face. She was right about one thing. The kids didn't deserve this, but I didn't deserve what had been done to me either. I exhaled sharply. "I'll never forgive them." I said, "I'll never sit in the same room, Marcus. I'll never shake your father's hand, and I will never forget what they did to me." Her lips parted as if she wanted to protest, but there was nothing left to say. "You wanted the damage undone," I continued. "You wanted to fix what you broke. Start with them." I turned toward my car. She called after me. "So that's it. You're just walking away." I paused, looking back at her. "I already walked away once, Olivia." I said, "And you let me?" She didn't have a response. I got into my car and drove off without looking back at my hotel. I sat in the dimly lit room staring at my phone for the first time in months. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel betrayal. I just felt tired. Her apology didn't fix what had been broken. Her family's refusal to acknowledge their mistakes only made it worse. And me. I had spent so much time fighting to be heard, fighting to prove my innocence, fighting to be in my children's lives. But now I was done fighting. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to my lawyer, filed the divorce papers. And for the first time in over a year, I felt like I could breathe. The divorce papers were sent the next morning. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. The moment I woke up, I made the call to my lawyer, instructing him to proceed with the legal filings. There was no room for negotiation, no lingering doubts. Olivia had already shattered every ounce of trust one had once placed in her, and I refused to let myself entertain the fantasy that things could ever go back to the way they were. By midday, I received a confirmation email. The paperwork had been sent to Olivia. Now, all I had to do was wait. That evening, I sat in my hotel room, sipping on a glass of whiskey, staring blankly at the muted television. Some crime drama played in the background, but I wasn't paying attention. My mind was too preoccupied with what I had done. It wasn't regret. It wasn't sadness. It was relief. For the first time since the accusations had been thrown at me, since I had been forced out of my own home, I felt like I had taken control of my life again. I was no longer at Olivia's mercy, no longer begging for scraps of my own dignity. And then the knock came. It was sharp, urgent. I already knew who it was before I even opened the door. When I pulled it open, Olivia stood there clutching a folder, the divorce papers, against her chest, her eyes red and swollen. "You can't be serious," she whispered. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Olivia, you're really doing this?" She interrupted, stepping forward into the room without waiting for an invitation. "You're actually divorcing me." I shut the door behind her, keeping my face unreadable. "I already told you I can't go back to how things were." She shook her head, disbelief etched across her features. "Adam, please, I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but divorce. This is our family. This is our life. You're just throwing it all away." I let a bitter laugh. "I'm not the one who threw it away, Olivia. You did. The moment you chose to believe a stranger over me, the moment you let your family humiliate me, the moment you made sure everyone in my life turned against me, you threw everything away." Tears W in her eyes. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I was so wrong. And I'm sorry. But can't we fix this? Can't we at least try?" I exhaled, slowly rubbing my temples. "Olivia, what exactly do you expect me to do? Just forget everything? Pretend the last year of my life didn't happen?" She swallowed. "No, I don't expect you to forget. But I do expect you to remember everything we had before this. We were happy, Adam. We had a good marriage. We built a life together. We did, I admit it. And then you destroyed it." She let out a choked SOB, gripping the papers tightly in her hands. "You don't have to do this. We can go to counseling. We can take it slow. I'll do anything. Anything, Adam. Just don't this." Her desperation was evident a year ago. Hearing those words from her might have meant something to me. A year ago, I might have clung to that hope, but not anymore. "I don't love you anymore, Olivia." The words left my lips before I could stop them. But once they were out, I felt lighter. She froze her lips, parting slightly. "You don't mean that?" I met her gaze unwavering. "I do." Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, she sank onto the bed, dropping the papers onto her lap, her fingers trembling as she held onto them. Is there nothing I can do? She whispered. I stared at her, at the woman I had once adored, the woman I had fought for, the woman I had built an entire life with. And all I could feel was emptiness. No, I said quietly. There's nothing you can do. Her breath hitched. I stood up, walking toward the door and pulling it open. You should go. She wiped at her cheeks, staring down at the papers. I don't want to sign this. That's your choice, I said. But the marriage is over, Olivia. Whether you sign it or not, I'm done. She stood up, clutching the folder to her chest for a moment. It looked like she wanted to say something else, but she didn't. Instead, she walked past me, pausing only briefly at the door before stepping out into the dimly lit hallway. I shut the door behind her, locking it. Then I let out a long, slow breath. It was over, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt free the next morning. I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, no lingering questions about whether I was making the right choice. The marriage was over. I had spent a year drowning in the pain of betrayal, of being cast aside like a criminal without proof. I had begged for the truth to be seen, for my innocence to matter. But it never did not. When it counted, and now, when Olivia finally knew the truth, when she was willing to beg and plead for a second chance, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love, only relief. I got dressed, drank my coffee, and went about my day, as if nothing monumental had happened the night before. But I knew it had, because last night, when Olivia walked out of my hotel room clutching those divorce papers to her chest, she had taken the last remnants of our marriage with her, and I was fine with that. Or at least I thought I was, until I got a call from my lawyer that afternoon. She didn't sign, he said. The moment I picked up, I closed my eyes, already feeling the headache coming on. Of course she didn't. She sent them back and signed, he confirmed, and I just got off the phone with her lawyer. She wants to meet with you again before making a final decision. I pinched the bridge of my nose. For what you know why, Adam? He said, his tone careful, Shek. Not ready to let go. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. She doesn't have a choice. There was a pause on the other end before he finally said, Then you need to tell her that yourself. Later that evening, I found myself outside Olivia's house again. I hadn't wanted to come, but I knew she wouldn't stop until she had this conversation. The kids were with Olivia's parents for the weekend, which meant this would be just the two of us. No distractions, no interruptions, just the final conversation. When she opened the door, she looked exhausted. Her hair was tied up in a loose bond, and she was dressed in an oversized sweater, her face devoid of makeup. But what caught my attention wasn't her appearance, it was her eyes. They were filled with defeat. I stepped inside without a word, following her into the living room. The place was too familiar, yet it felt foreign. I didn't belong here anymore. I hadn't. For a long time, she sat on the couch, the divorce papers sitting on the coffee table between us. You didn't sign? I said. Getting straight to the point, she looked down at the papers, then back at me. I can't, she admitted, her voice quiet. Qui. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Why she swallowed, gripping her hands together in her lap because I still love you. I stared at her, letting the weight of her words sink in. A year ago, those words would have meant everything to me. But now they meant nothing. I sat back, shaking my head. Love isn't enough, Olivia. She flinched but didn't argue. I know I destroyed everything, she said, her voice trembling. I know I broke you in ways I can't take back. But Adam, we have so much history. We have a family. Doesn't any of that count for something? I let out a slow breath, choosing my words carefully. Of course it does. But history doesn't erase what happened in our family that's still going to exist. Just in a different way. She wiped at her eyes, shaking her head. I don't want it to be different. You already made it different. I reminded her the moment you threw me out of this house, the moment you let your family attack me, the moment you told the world I was a Peter without proof. You changed everything, Olivia, not me. She let out a choked SOB. I thought I was doing the right thing. I exhaled sharply. And now that you know you were wrong, you expect me to just forget. She looked away, her shoulders shaking. I just want a chance to fix what I broke. I rubbed a hand down my face, exhausted. Some things can't be fixed, Olivia. Some things just end. She sniffled, looking up at me with glassy eyes. So that's it? She whispered. You're really leaving? I nodded. I am. Her lips trembled. What about the kids? I leaned forward. I will always be their father. I will always love them, and I will fight for them if I have to. But you and me? I gestured between us. We're done. A tear slipped down her cheek, and you don't feel anything. I hesitated, did I? Maybe a little sadness. Maybe a small part of me mourned the life we had built, the family we had created. But beyond that, no. Not the way she wanted me to. Not the way I should have. So instead of answering, I reached for the divorce papers, grabbed a pen, and flipped to the last page. Then, in one swift motion, I signed my name at the bottom. When I looked back at her, she was watching me, her expression unreadable. I slid the papers toward Hiro. It's your turn. She stared at them, her breathing uneven. For a moment, I thought she might refuse again. But then, after what felt like an eternity, she picked up the pen. Her hand trembled as she pressed it to the paper, and then she signed. It was done. I stood up, slipping my hands into my pockets. I'll have my lawyer file the final paperwork. She nodded numbly. Okay, I took a slow breath. Take care, Olivia. She looked up at me, her eyes full of sorrow, regret, and something else. Acceptance. You too, she whispered. I turned and walked toward the door. No long goodbyes, no final words, just an ending. And as I stepped outside, the cold air hitting my face, I realized something. I wasn't walking away in anger. I wasn't walking away broken. I was simply walking away. And for the first time in a long time, I was finally free. The moment I stepped out of Olivia's house, I felt the weight of the past 14 months lift off my shoulders. It was over. No more arguments, no more desperate pleas, no more waiting for something to change that never would. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel as I stared ahead at the dark, empty street. My breath was steady, my pulse even, yet my mind replayed the moment she signed the papers. The look in her eyes, the silent admission that this was truly the end. I expected to feel something: regret, relief, maybe even sadness. But all I felt was peace. For the first time in over a year, I was no longer stuck in limbo, waiting for someone else to decide my fate. I had taken control. I had walked away on my terms. I exhaled slowly, then turned the key in the ignition. Time to go. Instead of heading back to my hotel, I found myself driving without direction. The city was quiet. This late at night, the streets illuminated by dim streetlights casting long shadows against the pavement. It was familiar, yet distant, like I had once belonged here, but no longer did. Without thinking, I ended up at a small park on the edge of town. It used to be a place where I brought the kids when they were younger, where Olivia and I once sat on a bench watching them play, sipping coffee, while talking about the future, a future that no longer existed. I parked the car, leaning back against the seat, staring out at the empty playground. The past year had been hell. I had been humiliated, cast aside, forced to rebuild my life from scratch while my reputation crumbled. I had fought to prove my innocence, only to realize that it didn't matter. The damage had already been done, and the worst part? It had all been avoidable if Olivia had just believed me, if she had taken a second to think before assuming the worst, if she had chosen to trust me. Instead of blindly siding with strangers, with her family, with everyone but me, I clenched my jaw, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I had spent so long blaming myself, wondering if I could have done something differently, if I had failed in some way that justified what had happened to me. But now, sitting here watching the cold wind rustle through the trees, I knew the truth. It wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. And I refused to carry the weight of her mistakes anymore. The next morning, I packed my bags. Sydney had always been the escape plan, but now it was my reality. I had no reason to stay here. Nothing tied me down anymore, not Olivia, not the house we once shared, not the people who had abandoned me without hesitation. All that remained were my kids, and I refused to let Olivia dictate how much of a father I could be. I sat at the hotel desk, typing out an email to my lawyer. Proceed with the custody arrangement. I won't accept anything less than shared custody. I want legal rights to my kids, not just visitation. I was done being at Olivia's mercy, done letting her control the narrative, done playing the villain in a story I never wrote. As I hit send, my phone buzzed, Olivia. I stared at the screen for a long moment before finally answering hello. There was silence on the other end. Then a shaky breath. You're really leaving, aren't you? I leaned back in my chair, staring at my suitcase. Yeah, Olivia. I am. Another pause, so that's it. I exhaled slowly. What else is there left to say? She sniffled. I don't know how to let go. I closed my eyes. You don't have a choice. She let out a small, broken laugh. I know. I just thought maybe one day we could fix things. I didn't respond, because there was nothing left to fix. She had made sure of that. I'll make sure the kids can call you whenever they want, she said. After a moment, I nodded that she couldn't see it. Good, she hesitated again. Do you think you'll ever come back? I opened my eyes, staring at the city skyline through the window. I don't know. I admitted, maybe, but not for you. Her breath hitched, but she didn't argue. She already knew the truth. I had moved on, and this time I wasn't looking back. The airport was crowded, filled with the constant hum of voices, rolling suitcases, and the occasional announcement over the speakers. But despite the chaos, I felt calm. I moved through security, my bag slung over my shoulder, my mind clearer than it had been in over a year. My flight to Sydney was set to board in 30 minutes, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't leaving because I was running away. I was leaving because I was choosing myself. I grabbed a coffee from one of the kiosks and found a seat near the large windows overlooking the runway. As I sat there watching the planes take off into the gray December sky, my phone buzzed. I hesitated before pulling it out, a message from Olivia for a moment. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. I tapped the screen and read her words. The kids already miss you. AA asked if we could visit you in Sydney sometime. I told her, we'll see. I don't want to take them away from you, Adam. I won't stand in the way anymore. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. For months, every interaction with Olivia had been a battle, a fight for control, for truth, for justice. But this was the first time she wasn't trying to argue. The first time she wasn't trying to keep me away. I typed out a response. I'll always be their father, Olivia, no matter where I live. She read it almost instantly. 3 dots appeared as she typed a reply. I know I just wanted you to hear it from me. I'm sorry for everything. I stared at the message for a long time. A year ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now they were just words. I didn't hate her. I didn't love her. I simply didn't care anymore. And that was the moment I knew I had finally let go. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed peace. And for the first time in over a year, I had it. I typed my final response. Take care, Olivia. Then I put my phone on airplane mode, took a sip of my coffee, and waited for my flight, ready to start over. And this time, no one could take that away from me.